Hello everybody. Okay, I'm breaking out the Voltron GX-71 Voltron again by Bandai because I just got the Fantasy Jewel Green Lion in, the essentially the bootleg of the GX-71. I did a video on the red line today. I'm just going to compare the Green Lion to the Fantasy Jewel Green Lion, and for those of you who are thinking of picking one up, and let you see how they compare. All right, so we'll start with the box. Very similar to the Fantasy Jewel Red Lion box. You can see it's got looks like it's got kind of a photoshopped of the original GX-72 Lion. When I show you, you're going to see some of the things, some of the details that are on the Green Lion on the box are not actually on the figure that's in here, but they are on the original Soul of Jogokin figure. Then here's the back of the box, just says Fantasy Jewel. Then if you guys want to look for this particular item, I got it on TF Direct, but I believe this is the model number right here is the FJ, I think that's an ESW02. Okay, I'll go ahead and take it out of the box. Okay. It does come with some cellophane over the top. I already took that off. And as you can see, you get a tail, you get 3 weapons, the mouth weapon, 2 side weapons, and then you get your Green Lion. So I can get a little bit more light on there. Give you a look at it real quick. Okay, so here are the 2 lions to compare, the Fantasy Jewel and the Soul of Jogokin in the back. Alright, and we'll go over some of the differences. Start with the top here. You can see the molding is different on the Fantasy Jewel. On the Soul of Jogokin, the red piece here is larger. The black filling inside is more pronounced. On the Soul of Jogokin, you have these panel lines. You also have these dimples. And with the head, you have the same thing. You have these dimples here. And you can see the eyes. On the Fantasy Jewel, you can see the red is much smaller or thinner comparatively. Fantasy Jewel is missing the dimples, and it doesn't have the panel lines. It's flat here. And the same on the head. It doesn't have the dimples. The eyes are also much more narrow. Other differences is you can see the teeth on the Fantasy Jewel are thicker than they are in the Soul of Jogokin. That's kind of similar to the Red Lion. Now the legs on the Soul of Jogokin have a little bit more detailing, and they're thick. They're covered, and they're thick. They're still plastic. But if you look on the Fantasy Jewel, they changed the detailing a little bit, and the legs are a little bit hollowed out, thinner. They also don't have the swiveling feet like on the Soul of Jogokin. You have the where you can swivel the feet. Fantasy Jewel doesn't have that; it just has the up and down swivel. But it does have the I don't even know if it has the side to side. I believe the Red Lion did, but All right, now if you look on the Solar Chogokin, you have the outward swivel, so you can do more posing. See that? The shoulders swivel and they snap in. And the same with the back legs. But on the Fantasy Jewel, it doesn't seem like they have that. And I believe the red one did. They're hard to move. Yeah, it doesn't. I can see it doesn't have the swivel joint in there. It's just flat, so they don't swivel out. I gotta break out the red one and see if, I thought I remember that it did have that. Anyway, it's got a much cheaper ratchet inside the connector peg, where this one is much smoother and clicky. I don't know if you can hear that, or it sounds kind of nasty. Okay, it does have the swivel in the back and the swivel in the front. The head does turn. It also has the weapon, comes up. Yeah, you can feel on the Solar Chogokin, the joints just move so much nicer. I'm not doing that on camera. And here's a comparison of the weapons. You can see this one is smaller. That one is much larger, and it has more detail on the Solar Chogokin. This one is missing some of the detail. But what I believe Fantasy Jewel did is, of course, back in the day, if you remember in the 80s, we had the Popey Go Lion, and then we had the Matchbox Voltron, and then there was also Lion Butt. And if, back in the day, Lion Butt was almost indistinguishable, pretty much was indistinguishable from the Voltron or the Go Lion. Reason for that is that the company that produced the bootleg also produced the original Voltron for Matchbox. So they had the original mold, so they were making their Lion Butt off the original mold. What I'm pretty sure Fantasy Jewel is doing, or did, is they took this figure and they created a mold from this figure. And if you know, you make a copy from an original, you start losing some detail. So when they made the mold off of the original, instead of going back and resculpting in like the dimples and the panel, they just smoothed them out instead of going back in and resculpting them. And this would probably become much larger off the off molding it off this figure, so they just went in and reshaped it down a bit. And actually, if you look, I don't know if you can see that, the shape of the back on this Green Lion is actually different from the shape on this one. See the underside. And yeah, and you can see on the Fantasy Jewel, you can actually see the seam where on the Solar Chogokin, you can see it, but it's not nearly as pronounced. It's a lot more difficult to see. So you can see they left the green here, and it's painted silver on this one, on the Solar Chogokin. The gold pieces right here are actually, this one looks more gold. This one looks like an orangey rust color. And they don't, the Fantasy Jewel has a different type of connector on the side for the weapon than does the Green Lion. And the Fantasy Jewel does have the guns inside the mouth as well. And the Solar Chogokin down there. Okay. Sorry about that, it's a little bit dark. I'm trying to use the light from outside the sunlight. I don't really have a good setup for filming. But anyway, this is the Fantasy Jewel. As you can see, behind the arms, they did go back in and reshape the panel lines. They're a bit thicker and more pronounced than on the Solar Chogokin, which are a lot more subtle. They're not as deeply cut on the Solar Chogokin as they are on the Fantasy Jewel. Yeah, so I did check the red one, and this is the red Fantasy Jewel, and it doesn't have the side-to-side swivel either, so that's missing from these. That joint that lets the legs swivel out so you can get a better pose on the lions. This is a Solar Chogokin, so that's missing on the Fantasy Jewel. But I remember seeing photographs of the Fantasy Jewel that showed that. So I don't know if they were taking photos maybe of the Solar Chogokin at the time before they produced it. But anyway, this is the second one. They produced a red one so far and a green one. So these are the two that they've produced so far, the red and the green Fantasy Jewel. And I did see artwork for a blue lion that's supposed to come out next. Don't know when it's coming out. Now these are $50 each, the Fantasy Jewel ones. And if you didn't get the Solar Chogokin, you know, maybe you want to pick these up. They're kind of pricey at $50. They're pretty much, by the time you get the whole set, it's pretty much going to reach the price of the original Solar Chogokin, which was about $300. So if you figure if you're paying $50 for each of these, I don't know how much the leg limbs are going to come out for. And then you still have the black line, which I doubt the black line is going to come out for just $50. That's going to be a lot more complicated to produce. Another thing that concerns me about the Fantasy Jewel is whether or not it'll even connect to the black line, because there are differences in the connector on the Fantasy Jewel. On the Solar Chogokin, the cuts are smooth on the connector, and on the Fantasy Jewel, there's some areas where it's jagged. It's not cut as clean. So when the black line comes out, because they haven't produced a black line yet, it's kind of hit and miss with whether or not it will actually connect correctly. I hope it does, but who knows. But we're going to go over the accessories that the Green Lion came with next. Okay, so here's the accessories. The Solar Chogokin on the right and the Fantasy Jewel on the left. The Solar Chogokin, of course, comes with the straight tail. And the Fantasy Jewel comes with a bendy tail. I haven't attached it yet, but then you have this spiky kind of weapon, and this is the Solar Chogokin. Oops. And it's got the connector for the Solar Chogokin, the slot for the Green Lion. And this is the Fantasy Jewel. As you can see, it's not as sharp at the top. It's kind of blunted. And it's got a round connector at the back. And the spikes on the side are just as sharp, it seems. The gun has different detailing. That's the Fantasy Jewel. This is the Solar Chogokin. See, there's different molding on the Fantasy Jewel. They molded it differently. And they took that off, it looks like. Then here's the mouth weapon. Now the Fantasy Jewel is actually thinner. The sword pieces are thinner. The spikes are a little bit less pronounced, and the main point is less pronounced. You can see it's smaller, and the green parts are actually sculpted differently too. It does have the one connector on the bottom, which is just green, compared to the Solar Chogokin. Feels alright though. I mean, it's a good piece of plastic. Okay, so that's pretty much the Fantasy Jewel and the Solar Chogokin in a nutshell. Right off the bat, between the two, I mean, nobody's going to mistake the bootleg for the Solar Chogokin. You can tell the differences. The Solar Chogokin is higher quality, and it's got the detailing is much better, and even just holding it, the joints, moving the joints around, the connector in the back, you can feel that it just got a lot better quality. So the Fantasy Jewel shit you get for $50, it's not bad. I mean, if you don't have a Solar Chogokin and you're looking to get one and you don't want to pay $700 or $600 to $700, what I see them going for now, I seen some go for $550, but that was like a couple weeks ago. Now I see them like $600, $700, but that's eBay prices. I mean, you might be able to search around on Facebook fan sites and whatnot and see if somebody is willing to let one go cheaper. But in the meantime, yeah, for $50, you know, it's not the good thing about it is you buying one at a time, so you don't have to drop all the money at one time. You can buy one now, one later. Right now, the green and red are available, both of them on TF Direct. And they shipped it pretty quickly. Nice packaging. So let me know what you guys think if you're planning on picking one of these up. If you already have the Solar Chogokin, are you planning on picking up the bootleg as well? Or are you just going to stick with your Solar Chogokin? You can also see with the ears, like the Solar Chogokin ears are much nicer. Nice and pointy and small, and these are just like big. They look like, kind of look like fox ears, a little bit comical the way that they are. But yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the poor quality, but that's all I have right now.